Hi, and welcome to Dutch the Podcast. This is our second episode. Hi, I'm Mike right there. Tom Byfoot, the publisher of Mokum Publishing, and of course the publisher of Dutch the Magazine, of De Krant, and of course Dutch the Media Online. Hiya, Tom. How are you?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good. You know what? We made it through our first podcast last week, and here we go, doing it again. And I got to tell you, I think we're already on a roll because you've got a great guest lined up for today. Who are we talking to, and why is skating such a big deal to the Dutch?
Okay. I'm very excited as well. We're talking to a fellow called Marco Smits. He lives in Portland, Ontario, and he organizes outdoor skating events on a big lake in his hometown. And why that excites me? Because I love skating. Dutch people love skating. It's a very Dutch thing. But I'll tell you one thing, and I didn't know this, but I found out that skating is the most efficient mode of locomotion a human being can engage in with their own muscle power alone.
With just their own
muscle power,
their own motor. Wow,
their own motor, and it's just a glorious thing to do. We use speed skates, and speed skates make you go faster than hockey skates. And skating on a lake like the event we're going to be talking about is just wonderful. If you ever get the chance, if you get to Holland. And you can skate on the frozen lakes and canals in winter. You will never forget that experience. It's beautiful.
I have to tell you, it is something that when I've been, but I went to Amsterdam not too long ago, and as you see the canals, and they mention to you, they freeze up for a short time, and it's an awful lot of fun, and it becomes a festive way to get to work. In fact, it does conjure up a really romantic image of Holland.
It's funny that you say that and use the word romantic, because I'll tell you a story. I got a letter once from a reader of our magazine, Dutch the Magazine, who explained, and this is not an uncommon thing, who met his wife while out skating. Courtship is very strongly connected with skating. You go out and, the teenage boys and girls would meet each other and they'd often start dating after meeting each other on the ice. And you can skate, holding hands, arm in arm. It's part of the culture.
It does feel like it's right off of a Christmas greeting card, doesn't it?
It is, absolutely.
And so today you're going to connect us with this event. Why don't we do this? Before we head into the interview, I'll remind you, subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend. Don't forget to visit Dutch the Media, and wherever you're watching or listening to this, give us a good rating if you wouldn't mind, friends. That would be very nice of you. Now, why don't we do this? You had a chance to speak to Marco Smits, organizer of this wonderful event. We'll take you to that right now for a few minutes with Tom.
So we're very grateful to have Marco Smits with us today. He's the resident speed skating expert at NBC Network in the United States when there's speed skating events, but even more importantly, he is the organizer and actually founding organizer of the Skate the Lake event in Portland, Ontario. And welcome to the show, Marco, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, let's jump right in. Tell me a little bit about Skate the Lake. What is it?
Yeah, it's a speed skating event on Big Rideau Lake, which is the largest lake in eastern Ontario. And so it's traditionally there's 2 days of races, anywhere from 5K to 10 to 25 to 50.
Okay, now why are you doing this? I don't know of anywhere else in Canada. There used to be, I know, an event on Sylvan Lake in Alberta, but I got in touch with the tourist authority there, and they're not doing it anymore. Are you the only one in North America organizing outdoor speed skating on natural ice?
No, not really. Although I agree, you have to be a bit specific to find them. I mean, I know them from the years. There's an event in Lac-Beauport, just outside of Quebec City. The municipality maintains a 2.5 kilometer oval there, and sometimes there's races. I don't know exactly about the frequency.
Okay.
And actually, to be honest, in the early days of Skate the Lake, there were more events. We actually had an organization called Marathon Skating International, and we had a point series.
Okay.
But that
How big is your oval? Do you have an oval? Do you have a track? What do you do?
yeah, we do a 1 kilometer oval, and it's big and it's wide. Like it's I'd say at least 10 meters wide. And there's been a few years where we did 2.5K, but we just find 1K is well, it's more manageable for the volunteers, but it also for spectators. You don't have to wait so long for people to come around again. So if you're there freezing cold trying to cheer your family on, it's more fun to have a smaller oval. But 1 kilometer is still really substantial.
Well, that's a good size. I mean, an Olympic rink is 400 meters, right? So,
Yes.
so it's more than twice that, 2.5 times that distance. Now, why? Can I just ask you that open question? Why do this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, I'm Dutch, so I have ice courts, like ice fever.
Ice
And
fever. I wrote down a few words in Dutch, like ijspret,
yeah,
ice fever. Ijspret means ice fun.
yeah,
It's a Dutch thing, right? Tell me a little bit about that.
it is. I have it. Like even this year, like I've already been on. Like I'm very responsible. I always take a drill and make holes and make sure that we've got a few inches going. But it's just something. I don't know, when winter comes around and the first snow, and I don't know, I just have an urge to go out on the ice.
You know what? I feel totally what you're saying, but maybe for our Canadian and American listeners, we should explain that a little bit, how that fits within our background. So, Holland obviously has a lot of lakes and canals, and we have relatively mild winters. But as soon as it gets cold, people want to go out on the ice, and we've been doing this for hundreds of years. You look to paintings from the Golden Age, you see hundreds of people out on the ice. In Canada, you have snow days, which means it's so snowy, bad weather that you don't want to go to school. You can't go to school. In Holland, when I was a kid, we used to have something called ijsvrij. When the weather was really nice, there was a nice surface of ice on the lakes in our area. The school would say, "Go and enjoy yourself. Go out on the ice." Does that ring a bell?
Oh, very much. And I don't know, I'm sure, like, I think the climate is changing. I remember in the Netherlands that maybe it's just a childhood memory, but I thought the winters were longer, and there was more skating. You're right. The schools would let you go out early, and in my village we used to have a World War II bunker. And it was on an island, and so the I guess you call it a moat or whatever in English.
Yeah,
The water around it. That was a common place to race around. And I was really, especially in the Netherlands, not a good skater at all. Some of my family members go to the oval. My brother skated at the oval. I didn't. My love for actual skating grew here in Canada.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were dependent, really. If you didn't go to the Oval, and that's another thing that's very typical. Holland has, I believe, 14 artificial 400-meter ovals. All of North America only has 4. So that just indicates how prevalent it is. But yeah, we were dependent to a certain extent on natural ice, which only came, a few weeks in winter if you were lucky. Now, tell me, I saw on your website that you are serving snert and the pea soup, thick Dutch pea soup. This is so intimately involved for me as well with skating. You go out on the canals and there'd be little shacks be set up. People would be selling hot pea soup, hot chocolate. So, will there be pea soup?
Yeah, it's funny because this year actually there's some challenges with the food and drink, and so and everything that we're going to overcome, nothing major, but so there was for a moment there was talk of not having snert, and I'm like, no, that can't happen. Like, and I know people come for it. Like there are we advertise it as sort of as an activity, and people, I know people come for it. So
Yeah, for our listeners, you'd go skate. You'd skate, a few miles or a few kilometers, and then someone, a farmer in their backyard, had set up a little shack selling chocolate milk and pea soup.
with Maggi,
Beautiful memories
with Maggi, of course.
with Maggi
Maggie.
condiment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we talk about skating, when I first came to Canada, which is about the same time you did, I was looking around and say they have lakes, they have winter. Why don't they have a skating culture? Now that's not really fair because, of course, they do have a skating culture, but it's focused on hockey and hockey skates. Now, can I use hockey skates on the Skate the Lake Oval?
Any type of skates is welcome, and we've had every type of skate over the years. And it's interesting you say about the Canadian skating culture. I remember one time in the last lap, and this guy had timed it, in the last lap being overtaken in the run to the finish on a guy on hockey skates. There are people that really can skate also longer distances on hockey skates. So, but yeah, figure skates, clap skates. I have detachable ones, the Nordic skates.
Oh, the Nordic skates, yeah.
Yeah, and so. There's not an issue.
Would you advise people? Should we talk a little bit about the 11 Cities tour?
Sure.
Would you advise someone to do that on hockey skates?
200K. I mean, like I said, I've seen people do 25K here on hockey skates.
Okay.
I don't know if I've seen the 50. Potentially, there's been one or two, but I don't know. The blade is half the size, so you're pushing.
Well, I noticed. I'd gone onto a hockey arena with my speed skates, and in 2 or 3 strokes, you're from one end of the arena to the other, and you got to be very careful that you don't knock anyone over. So there's a big difference. I mentioned the 11 Cities race, and I just thought I'd mention that a little bit. It was 2 days ago when we're taping this. Now, of course, I don't know when people will be listening, but when we taped this 2 days ago, it was 60 years ago that the 1963 Elfstedentocht, 11 Cities Tour, took place. Now, the 11 Cities Tour is a historic race in the northern province of Friesland, and it covers, as you said, 200 kilometers, 125 miles of ice track. And it's only held when the ice is 6 inches thick along the entire track, which doesn't happen that often. And unfortunately, there hasn't been one since 1997. So that's a long time ago. And that's why a lot of Dutch people who enjoy long distance skating do come to places like Canada and Austria, like you mentioned, the Weissensee in our pre-chat. Do you see any opportunity for Skate the Lake to organize a big marathon event with lots of the Dutch professional marathon skaters?
Yeah. In the beginning, we really thought that could happen. We had quite a bit of press in the Netherlands, and we've had some prominent skaters here. We even had Evert van Benthem's son here one time. And
Evert van Bentham, just for the listeners, is the winner twice even of the 11 Cities race in the mid-'80s. And he moved to Alberta in 1999, and he still lives in Alberta with his family. Well, his sons are adults now, but so they came out?
Marijn did.
Okay.
And in the early days, I talked to Evert a few times, because he was organizing races, and so I was just wanted to pick his brain. He was very generous with his time, and so. But yeah, you asked about the potential of Skate the Lake doing like a 200K or something like that. Like there is, it's we've looked into it because there's a real coincidence that we were on the Rideau Canal, right? And the Rideau Canal is 200 kilometers long. And there's villages along the Rideau Canal. So you could potentially think of having ice committees in each of these villages and then connecting them and doing a 200K. That being said, especially with the weather, even in our coldest winters, I think it would have not been possible. And you would have to. There were certain sections where you would have to almost like organize a bus to go around certain deep sections of
Oh,
the
you
lake.
could always do that. Typically, Cluner.
Yeah, for 20
Cluning.
kilometers.
So again, the cluning is when in the 11 cities race or other tours in Holland, there's no ice or the ice isn't safe enough where you have to cross a road or a bridge or something. They'll put out mats, carpet on the floor or on the street, and people will run across that on their skates. It's actually quite funny to see, but it's part of people even train, and I've heard there's even been cluning championships. But you opened up a whole bunch of things there. One, the Rideau Canal. So Rideau in Ottawa itself has I think it's about 7-8 kilometer skateway. And also you mentioned ice committees. And one of the things about the Netherlands, why we also have so much skating outdoors, is almost every village and town has an ice club that will form a committee, and they will set out tours on the canals and lakes, anywhere from 10K to 50 to 100K. And if you ever want to see the Dutch at their most relaxed, their most friendly, if you could ever get skating in winter in Holland, I would advise to do that. It doesn't matter your level, doesn't matter the type of skates you use. It's just so much fun, and I think that's something you're trying to recreate on Rideau Lake.
We've had regulars, our regulars, the ones that come every year, who have flown to the Netherlands for, like, if there's that 1 week where there's ice, and they've always wanted to experience. They've gone just like they take time off, and they almost have like that ice courts idea. And so we've had some of our regulars who go to the Netherlands when there's that opportunity, just because it's so unique. I can see that.
Yeah. So one thing, still, I think we're getting close to wrap up, but you've had to postpone the event this year.
The temperatures are just not there this year. Originally we did skate the lakes always on the last weekend of January, and that's basically because in the early days we looked at the calendar and we just picked the coldest weekend, and we figured that makes sense to. It might be cold, but you can dress for it. But you need ice, and so it never really. Well, there's been a few years where it was iffy, or like 2 or 3 weeks before the event, we only had a couple of inches, but we could always see a cold snap coming in the distance in the long-term forecast. But this year, when we had our meeting a couple of weeks ago, it just didn't look like that was coming. And actually, the area where the oval was, it had frozen over, but it completely melted again. So we just, we decided, let's be responsible and
well, you don't want to send hundreds of people out onto. Now, no. I read somewhere that in Ottawa they're actually using something called slush cannons. Have you seen anything about that?
Actually, no. I heard about it, but I'm not aware of slush cannons. There's been times where it sounds very like a very useful device. Like I can imagine that
they're actually
just does
pouring.
it.
Basically, they're pouring ice cubes into the Rideau Canal, is the way I understand it. But
okay.
So, do you have a Zamboni out on the ice? By the way, how do you prepare?
Yeah, well. We call it an Olympia because or we call it our ice resurfacer because it's actually not a Zamboni. It's an Olympia built in Canada. So we try to be true to the Canadian angle, but I know it's like Kleenex, like it doesn't matter what the brand is.
Yeah, it's like a generic term. Yeah.
But we do. We purchased one from the local hockey rink here a few years ago, and I don't know. I have an interesting anecdote if you have time for that about our Olympia. So after the first year, we did a 2.5 kilometer oval the first year, and we realized it was way too big and we couldn't handle it, and our equipment, we did it and it was great, but we realized the missing piece was Zamboni, and so I personally called the Olympia factory. It's in Ontario, I think in Aurelia, but I'm not 100% sure. Could be Aurora too. It's in Ontario. And to my surprise, the owner of the company picked up, and and Andy Sloop, I still remember his name.
Wow.
And so we got talking. He was really excited. And a few days later, a brand new Olympia arrived in front of my house on a trailer for free. And,
Unbelievable.
and he just dropped it off, and he said, "Here you go. You got it for 4 weeks." And
Wow.
and the next year again.
And Sloop, you said, was he Dutch?
I think he was
Sounds like
either
a Dutch name.
German or Austrian.
Okay.
Immigrant, just like you and I, and
Yeah.
and started this from scratch in his garage, and he was like extremely generous, and that I think it happened for 2 or 3 years, and then we weren't going to buy a Zamboni, we were going to buy an Olympia somewhere, and then the local rink had one that was ready to retire, and we purchased it and converted it to gas. And we've used it ever since. And actually, a couple of years ago, we sent it to the Olympia factory for like a refurbishing kind of thing,
Okay.
and they gave us a really good deal. And so we've always been very proud to be associated with that.
Okay. Well, I think that sort of wraps it up. Before we go, can you give us the information for people who will listen to this and would like to come to the event? Where is it? When is it? And what can people expect? Basically, how to get there?
Yeah, so it's Skate Lake, and our website is skatelakeportland.com, skatelakeportland.com, and we're also on Facebook and Twitter. And it's this year it's on February 18 and 19 in the village of Portland, Ontario, on Big Rideau Lake in the township of Rideau Lakes. So it's basically between Kingston and Ottawa, about an hour south of Ottawa. And yeah, I encourage anybody to come and try on their stalen Noren. And or any types of skates, and even if you don't skate, it's fun to come and watch. And we have
And
all
eat some
kinds
snert. Eat
of-
some pea
eat
soup.
some snares, stand around the fire, watch some speed skaters go around. Like what more do you want?
Wow, it sounds like great fun. I'm going to do my best to come out this year. I would really love to. Thank you so much, Marco Smits from Portland, Ontario, organizer of Skate the Lake.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
A, what a great idea for an event here in Ontario. B, what a great guy. Marco Smits was a great interview. That was very entertaining, Tom.
Thank you. Well, I enjoyed it very much, and yeah, it's great to talk to Marco.
They've had their challenges, by the sounds of it, weather being the big one, of course. But it seems like that's going to turn, and I think that we'll have a weather pivot in time for this to become an amazing event.
We'll be there. Well, I'll be there if I get the chance.
Excellent. Well, we'll check in from there. Maybe you can catch a couple of minutes of audio and or video to share with us from the event, and that would be a great deal of fun. Marco, not the last guest we're having on this podcast, I can tell you that. Another great show coming up next time. Meanwhile, don't forget, DutchTheMedia.com. If you don't subscribe already, Dutch the Podcast. Right where you are right now, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification button if it's on YouTube, and you'll be notified when another podcast arrives. Many thanks to the publishers and the people involved in Decrant, and of course the flagship Dutch the Magazine. Thanks so much, Tom.
That's great. Thank you so much, and see you next time.